Chapter 1, It's Not Over, January 2012. My first morning of new awareness came on the 3rd of January 2012, when it all began to come back as a reminder that it wasn't over. The new year had just arrived, past the celebrations and feeding frenzies. The quietness and urban rhythm returned to the usual grayscale paradigm of work and lack of sunlight, frequent and real in so many northern European cities. Colorful lights adorning the streets were being pulled down by hard-working laymen, enduring the freezing temperature, carrying them back into the storage rooms where they rest undisturbed until the next Christmas. Citizens, filled with extra calories, would keep stuffing themselves with leftovers of delicious and nourishing food, riding the need for opulence, still for a few days to come. The morning was filled with sunlight bouncing off the big 8-story post-war building in front of my windows, adorned by engravings in big letters on the entrance door, where teachers and students has passed hours of their lives, beginning or ending their careers. 3 stories below my flat, parking lots were occupied by delivery trucks and cars running their errands on a normal Tuesday morning. Walking and cycling pedestrian and tourists roamed and arrived down to their destinations. A group of students held their coffees and smoked cigarettes, exhaling warm steam from their mouth before going in for class. Nothing unusual, another day starting and ending like many others. There was almost a feeling of relief in knowing my existence was just as real as the teacher I was observing in the university building across the street, with his eyes piercing the computer screen. I stood there, losing focus for a few seconds, sipping in the intensity of mundane life, letting the flood of possibilities overwhelm me to the point where nothing less kicked in as a way to help me out of the physical limits of reaching illumination. I soaked up a few more seconds into that feeling, knowing how weird everything still felt. Then moved back, looking away from the window and heading to the kitchen, where the desire for a second coffee surged up as a sort of compensation for a good deed. Man-made utensils were the perfect way to start the day. My favorite was the stainless steel vapor-powered mocha cafetiera, very easy to use. It delivered the proper result, depending on the quality of the coffee you found in your neighborhood. I opened it in a deliberate series of moves that had almost never changed as long as I could remember. Unscrewing the top, I took the filter out, opened the garbage bin, and placing the back side of the filter between my lips, I puffed dryly. The hardened coffee had escaped the enclosure where it was caged, landing randomly on a milk carton this time. Filling the bottom with water and the filter with new, freshly ground coffee, I screwed it on tightly, setting on the stove and fired it up. Then I started to summarize, going through the usual pattern of thoughts and regrets that almost automatically possess my brain daily. The dependence from my work created a comfort zone where for the last 3 years I managed to reconstruct myself, heal what had been damaged for the most part. Somehow, focusing on work helped me to re-establish a sense of normality that I had lost, especially when the scars were still fresh. Things happen sometimes. When you were hurt and the flesh started bleeding, you could not avoid the pain. The only thing left for you was to believe your body would perform that ancient and mystic magic of healing itself. And that was exactly where I was at. The coffee pot started rumbling like a Weber carburetor, steadily increasing in roar until its carafe got filled up. The smell wafting into the room was pleasant, and I couldn't help but feel more connected to earth. The simple aroma replenished my fatigued mind and hacking muscle for a moment, allowed me to remember why I like mornings. I warmed some milk, making myself a fairly large cup of latte, then looked for the brightest spot around the table and sat there. Flyers and booklets, the kind you find in your mailbox every week, were sprayed randomly across the surface. The top page of one of them read, "Mega deal $399 instead of $499 laptop." I didn't have any intention of buying a new computer, so I kept sipping and allowed my head to compute a reasonable strategy for the day. Suddenly, my cell rang, pulling me back from my moment of relaxation. The display showed a number I didn't have in my contact, starting with the country code +33. I stared at the telephone screen, realizing somebody was calling me from France. As I pressed the green icon on the touch screen, a small lump formed into my throat. "Hello," I ventured cautiously. The voice on the other side felt warm and recognizable. Even though she didn't introduce herself, I knew right away who she was. "Hey, how are you?" Her accent was unmistakable. 4 words were all she needed to project her image into my thoughts. By reflex, I jumped from my chair, spilling coffee all over the floor. "I don't believe it," I howled, realizing it was the one phone call I had been waiting for a long time. "Years." "Am I disturbing you?" a gentle voice inquired, slowly pushing itself into my life once again. Immediately, my mind saw the archives of her idiosyncrasies and habits I'd recorded through the years of knowing her. I paused a long while, with her hanging on the other side of the phone, silent, taken by a burst of anxiety and confusion for all that it could mean. Before I could formulate the thoughts and speech, each small details of her personality played before me, wishing up from somewhere within. Rolls of all the 35 fields submerged my mind's eyes, playing an intricate trailer of our past. But remember the warm, alto tone of her voice, growing steadily thinner and higher at each sentence, as she escalated into a warmer acknowledgement of me. I had a compelling need to always say "oui, oui" when I finally got her point, while she curved her white lips. The admonishing gesture she'd throw at you, wrinkling her forehead when she disapproved of your manners. The quelling stares, her green swimming eyes, and the list went on and on. It all came back to me into one split second, lining up small fragment and movement, like a personal screening into the secret chambers of my memories. Hoping to control the flood of coffee pouring out of the cup, I tried to avoid the puddle of the floor, only to stab my toe on the table leg, condemning more coffee to follow the simple rule of physics and acquire enough energy and movement to reach my face and anything else within a radius of 10 feet. I removed the phone from my ear, lifting it as high as possibly could. Mumbly cocked shit. Wait a sec. I let the cup in the sink, reaching for the first cloth I could find to dry my chest and face. I could already hear her giggling at my clumsiness, as if she already expected such a reaction. Sarah. My Sarah, I thought as I dried my chin. A friend, a dear creature who meant and means a hell of a lot to me. We hadn't spoken a word for at least 2 years, and now she was on the other end of the line, as if nothing had ever happened. The two of us had gotten through like comets into the vastness of the mind, shown the way to understand the mystery unfolding, only to be left abandoned like foster children one day without any explanation, only more maddening doubts. My dear Sarah, you withdrew from me after the incident, after that night. The emotion overwhelmed me as I found myself shuddering profusely like a faucet gurgling and spitting bubbles of air. Our lives had gone back to a stamping ground of emotion and tears. Each one of us needed time to reconcile with the regularity and logic of the everyday world. I was doing my best to steer clear of any abnormality and ignore or repress those manifestations still coming at times. Before long, I couldn't control my thoughts anymore, and thus, if I possessed but a remote control in the hands of the space aliens, I become remembering some years back.